a lot of nostalgia in Hello Dolly. Just like My Fair Lady, it is set at the turn of the 20th century, and the clothes, the ways of transport that people use, the morals, the dances, all go back to the Edwardian period. Of course, Hello Dolly has much more American interest, very direct American interest. It is set on the outskirts of New York, and the characters are typical American self-made people, merchants and shopkeepers, and quite importantly, there is a Jewish influence here. Dolly is very decidedly a Jewish matchmaker. There is also quite a lot of stylistic nostalgia. That is the way that the musical is constructed. It all goes back to the tradition of the operetta, you may remember from the very first class, especially the operettas dealing with love and matchmaking, and especially the one called The Merry Widow. If you want to see a good operetta, The Merry Widow is definitely the one to start with. This is a very typical Broadway formula with typical elements visible especially in the title number. In the film version, we have Louis Armstrong playing the title tune on the trumpet. This was a very popular move, a very good move on the part of the creators of the film. But generally, the title song became a standard. It went into the Great American Songbook, if you remember this tune. But I would like to draw your attention to another thing. You'll have quite a few interesting little excerpts to watch from different uses of Hello Dolly in later decades. So probably some of you are familiar with a fairly recent use of Hello Dolly in the film, the animated film WALL-E. And the recording of Hello Dolly, the film version, is the only thing left of our civilization. We may ask ourselves, why would the creators of WALL-E decide that it is the film version of Hello Dolly with Barbara Streisand and Michael Crawford the only thing worth preserving from our own civilization? Perhaps it's the love theme, which is important also for WALL-E. Perhaps it's the nostalgia, so we have like the uber nostalgia really, for not only the turn of the 20th century, but the whole earthly civilization. But it's not the most interesting thing that could be done with Hello Dolly. As early as 1968, there was a Broadway revival, and you'll see a little excerpt. It's not really the best quality. This is from a Tony Gala, because this revival got some Tonys in their own right. The interesting thing was that it was an all-black cast version of Hello Dolly. So the role of Dolly, that was played originally by Carol Channing, was taken by Pearl Bailey, one of the first really big stars, black stars of American musical. She played Dolly. Again, nothing was changed in terms of the plot, of the music, even of the style. It's not brought into more modern surroundings. No. It is the turn of the 20th century, but everyone is black. The way they sing, the way they dance. There is a little bit of black-inspired dancing, the so-called cakewalk, if you watch this fragment. But generally, this is a very interesting use of nostalgia, because it provides an insight a community of rich, successful black people, something that especially at the turn of the 20th century did not exist. This was still time of considerable racism. This was still time of segregation, but not to the point of having whole black towns with the full social structure, with the merchants, with the rich and the middle class. And this was something, in my opinion, very, very interesting, to use both Hello Dolly, as conventional as it is, and to use the theme of nostalgia to create a world that perhaps could have happened, perhaps should have happened, but never did in historical reality. So that's one very interesting take on Hello Dolly. And the last one is again a short excerpt, the title song from London, from the 1980s. And the main role, the role of Dolly, is played by Danny LaRue. And Danny LaRue was a drag queen. So, of course, we may go back to the fact that Jerry Herman was gay, and by that time he wrote La Cage aux Folles. But why? What does it change in making this very conventional musical into a drag queen play? All other characters were, let's say, cast according to their regular gender. But Danny LaRue, playing Dolly as a more female than female, like ultra feminine, makes you think that perhaps from the very beginning there were such elements in the character of Dolly herself, that she was so feminine, that she was so spectacular and so flamboyant, that she was more than a woman. She was actually a woman playing drag queen. So why not have a drag queen play the woman on the stage? So this is again something very unusual, quite controversial as it was on the stage in the 80s, but very interesting, the way that musical conventions and musical traditions could be used to further something new, something, I would say, socially provocative even, in the original, in the revivals, in the new stagings. So this is what I leave you with this week. Watch the fragments, and for next week we'll talk about Shakespeare. So please watch any version. Film versions are fine. Kiss Me Kate by Cole Porter, West Side Story, and if you want to be adventurous, try to find some other musicals inspired by Shakespeare. There is a new one called Something Rotten, which is a kind of farcical comedy. You may want to watch this one. Or perhaps look for something else. And see you next week. Thank you. Hello, it's November now, and yes, the previous part was recorded in March, and we were quarantining, and that's that's why it's kind of funny. But I hope it's still watchable. What I wanted to add to this part about Hello Dolly and My Fair Lady, and especially Hello Dolly, is that perhaps it's a good moment to have a little fragment here about the black musicals on the margin of this Broadway revival of Hello Dolly, with Pearl Bailey in the role of Dolly Levi. So there has been, basically from the beginning of Broadway, there has been an undercurrent, like a sub-style of musicals with black cast and made by black creative teams as well. Sometimes these were entire shows, like probably the first such success was a show called Shuffle Along from 1921, so even before Showboat. These shows basically featured African American inspired music, mostly jazz at the early stage, but later on other musical genres inspired by the music of African Americans. Also, they catered, at least initially, mostly for black audiences. So they would be played by black actors for black audiences. Of course, increasingly because of the quality of the shows and also the popularity of jazz music, not only among the African American population, but the general mainstream. These shows started gaining popularity, also drawing more attention to the questions of racial representation, racism in general, to the rather problematic legacy of the minstrel show that you may recall. So you start having musicals like Showboat, which partially use racial themes and black cast, but it's usually done in contrast with white cast and white themes, let's put it this way. But still there are shows that are all black and they continue as this kind of undercurrent. So if you are interested, if you'd like to know more, I will give you a few interesting titles. So 1935, Porgy and Bess, this black folk opera by Bernstein, trying to combine two things. The African American musical tradition and the very high theater and high prestige genre of the opera. This was very popular, and even more so, it was a game changer. It was something that introduced new grounds, both in the opera and in the musical. Then we have another opera-inspired musical called Carmen Jones in the 1940s, based on Bizet's Carmen, but moved to a contemporary setting among black characters. Also, Cabin in the Sky, 1940, a kind of Faustian theme about a man bargaining for his life with an angel and the devil, so he has to repent and prove that he is worthy of surviving and having a life with his wife. So this is the situation before this black Hello Dolly with Pearl Bailey and the entire cast being black actors. Then we have a lot of interesting shows that explore other avenues, that start to experiment stylistically with rock music, with rap music, with R&B music, so quite a lot of interesting proposals. I think I already mentioned The Wiz from 1974, which is a very interesting and quite experimental version of The Wizard of Oz. if you want to, that might be quite an interesting subject for your essay. The different iterations of the Wizard of Oz story, from the film with Judy Garland, Wicked, and including the Wiz. There was a film version made with Diana Ross as Dorothy and Michael Jackson as the Scarecrow. It didn't really succeed so much commercially, but it became a kind of film with what's sometimes called the cult following, so there are some die-hard fans who still like it. Then another very popular and quite influential musical, a type of jukebox musical, although not exactly following the careers of one particular music group, but combining different aspects of several such music groups. The title is Dreamgirls, and then again you may be familiar with the film version. There was a film version a few years ago, if I remember correctly, with Beyonce playing one of the main roles. But what this musical is remembered for today mostly is one of the songs sung by another character. I don't remember her name now. One of the original members of this girl group, the Dreamgirls, when she is dismissed from the group, and also when her romantic attachment to the manager of the group fails. She sings one of the great musical theatre torch songs, so songs about disappointment, about broken hearts, about unreciprocated love, torch songs, after the idiom to carry a torch for somebody, meaning to be infatuated, to be in love. The title of this very, very famous song is And I Am Telling You, or the full title, And I Am Telling You I Am Not Going. So we have this character usually played by kind of stereotypical large black woman with a huge voice. So she kind of belts this out about her suffering, about her disappointment, about the way that she's going to survive and surprise everybody in the end. So if not the whole musical, which is interesting, at least perhaps Google this song. It's a very famous song in its own right. Then a few songs from a few musicals from the recent decades. From 1990, there is a very interesting show called Once on This Island, which has the kind of Caribbean feel, and it tells basically a story of the Little Mermaid, but without the mermaid, but with human characters living on two sides of an island. Another thing, what do we have? The Color Purple from 2005. Again, a black show based on a popular and acclaimed film, which was not originally a musical, and the play was made into a musical. And of course, what we have now are the shows that everybody forgets are black shows, or mostly black shows. Lion King and Hamilton. So the shows that basically surpassed this category, this box of being a black musical, and they were just wonderful, successful, interesting musicals on very many levels, not only through the questions of race and the questions of casting. And yet another thing I would like to draw your attention to, the practice, a very popular practice in modern theatre, especially drama theatre, blind casting. That is, casting all kinds of actors in various roles with complete disregard to their looks and to their ethnic background. So you might have, I don't know, a black actor being a brother or a father to somebody who has, I don't know, Asian looks or white or anything. So a slightly different approach to race and casting than what we have, for example, in Hamilton or Lion King, because here the race doesn't mean anything. It just happens to be some secondary characteristics of an actor. One show that we are going, hopefully, to discuss at the very end of this semester is Hadestown, and this is what they did there. The original casting of Hadestown had this blind casting quality, so you have actors of every possible ethnic background playing what is basically at the same time American people from the 1930s and characters from Greek mythology, and also something I recently watched the recording of, a British musical, a fairly new British musical called The Grinning Man, it's based on a lesser known novel by Victor Hugo, so the same man who wrote Les Miserables. We may end up talking about it at some point, The Grinning Man. And there you have like classical blind casting, so you have black actors playing, I don't know, the sister to the Queen of England, because why not? Because why not? So that's it about Hello Dolly and My Fair Lady and Nostalgia, and as I said before, next week we'll talk about Shakespeare. Thank you.